Hey everybody, welcome to another edition of Travis on Sports. I'm your host Travis Tyler, and as promised, this is our NBA preview show for the 2022-2023 season. With me today is Naresh Vissa, a best-selling author, entrepreneur, investor, and former draft intern with the Houston Rockets under Daryl Morey and Sam Hinkie. Naresh, welcome to the show.
Hey, Travis, it's really a pleasure to be on. Love talking sports, basketball. I do a lot of podcast interviews, media
Uh,
interviews on like business and marketing and technology. So it's good to talk about something different.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to getting your perspective on this stuff. You got an interesting background. Um, so for everyone out there, we're gonna get some of his thoughts on the offseason and some specific moves that were made, and then move into some season predictions at the end here. So let's start with the opening night of the NBA or the opening days of the NBA. I know it's very early. Who's impressed you the most so far in the early season?
Well, it's like you said, it's obviously
Yeah,
super, super early,
yeah,
but I can tell you just by looking at some stats, watching some highlights, watching some games. There are two teams that have one team that has impressed me and one team that surprised me.
okay,
And those two teams are the New Orleans Pelicans and the Utah Jazz.
okay,
So the let's start with the Pelicans. They have a really, really strong starting unit. I would say probably I would put their starting five up against most other starting fives out there.
uh,
Really, really good with Zion Williamson healthy, with
yeah,
Brandon
that helps.
Ingram playing at an extremely high level, which he's been doing for the past few seasons. With, of course, CJ McCollum, the the veteran. You also talk about um, Jonas Valanciunas, who has been one of the most efficient centers for the past few years.
Yeah,
They're a young, up and coming team, and I'm just very impressed. I was very impressed with their victory in
yeah,
they blew out the Brooklyn Nets.
yeah.
It
That
wasn't
was
even
that was
a
impressive.
close game.
Yeah,
So I'm impressed with them. I don't think a lot of people had them even making the playoffs. Maybe
yeah,
being a bubble team if they're healthy. That's one of the keys is can they stay healthy? That's just so important. But they have a lot of good young talent. They've got some really good veterans. So I think they're going to end up. I think they're going to end up doing quite well this season. And then the Utah Jazz. They also had an impressive victory in their first game against the Denver Nuggets, reigning MVP Nikola Jokic. And what the thing about the Jazz, they traded away their two best superstars, really, defensive
yeah.
player of the year, multiple defensive player of the year, Rudy Gobert, as well as Donovan Mitchell, who's a near superstar. And they have depth. They've got
Yeah.
10 guys who they're playing, and all 10 of them are rotation players in the NBA. They've got some really good young talent that they traded
Uh-huh.
for. So they have that going for them. And then they have a lot of veterans, like I bring up, guys like Rudy Gay, guys like um, Kelly Olynyk,
Yeah,
and of course Mike Conley, who's one of the best
yeah,
defenders in the NBA. And they also Jordan Clarkson, a multiple six man or former six man of the year winner.
yeah.
So before the season started, there was this idea that the Jazz they're gonna blow it up, which I think they are. I still think they're trying to blow it up.
Right.
But what's going to end up happening is I think they're going to end up doing much better than the league anticipated, than even they anticipated, and they'll be able to ship off a bulk of those veterans, if not most of those veterans, as we get
Uh-huh.
closer to the trade deadline. And but again, their young talent is still really, really strong. I mean, they're bringing Colin Sexton off the
Uh-huh.
bench.
Yeah,
That's
that's a good lineup when you have to do that.
it's a very good lineup when you and he's 23 years old. They're bringing him off the bench as their like seventh man. He's not even
Yeah.
their sixth man. He's their seventh man. And Malik Beasley, who's another young talent, coming off the bench in a contract year, maybe in a contract. The team may end up picking up his option
Uh-huh.
if he continues to perform like he did in the first game. But he's coming off the bench. You have Rudy Gay coming off the bench who performed quite well in that first game. And then one player they traded for, Jared Vanderbilt, he had a good preseason and an excellent first game. This guy's a hustler.
Yeah. He's a
He's
good
out
young
of
player.
Kentucky. He's an undersized center. They're playing in that center. He can play multiple positions. He's an extremely good defender. I really like this Jazz team, surprisingly. uh, which is like and of course they also got something like 11 or 12 first round picks that they're
Yeah.
owed just in those two trades. And then they traded a few other players. So I really like, just like I like the Cleveland Cavaliers and
Yeah.
where they are moving forward. I like the moves that they made. I really like what the Utah Jazz did, trading away their two superstars, their highly paid superstars, and staying competitive. I think they will stay competitive for the next, because of this, for the next 10 years at least, if not 15 years. They're going to stay competitive and ultimately become really, really good.
Okay. That's interesting because their Jazz were kind of entering a rebuild. Um, and to see that they may still be able to be competitive is a good sign, and it kind of uh it good endorsement on Danny Ainge as an executive again.
Yeah, absolutely. Him, the GM, I think it's Justin Zanuck. Um, they've they've done a good job, and this is very similar to what the Oklahoma City Thunder did a few years ago, where
Okay.
they traded away Russell Westbrook, and then they traded away a few of their other veterans, and they
Uh,
brought in Chris Paul, and it was just assumed Chris Paul's old. They've got all these young players
right.
and they're gonna be a lottery team. And they ended up being, I think it was a number 4 seed in the playoffs, and they did very well that season. So it can turn into that situation this year. If they the key is health. Look, if Mike Conley gets injured and if Lauri Markkanen gets injured, or
Yeah.
if some of these main guys, like I said, they have depth, which is huge. But if the injury bug hits them and like 4 or 5 guys are out, then you're looking at fighting for the first draft pick. But if they're healthy, which almost all these guys are playing for contracts for next season,
Yeah.
so they're going to be playing hard, and they have a new young coach looking to establish himself. He's
Right.
the second youngest coach in the NBA now. I think he's like 34 years old.
Okay.
So
Yeah.
when you have that mix, a first time head coach who's really young and who's just looking to win, plus the depth and experience they have mixed with really, really good young talent like Jared Vanderbilt, like Taylor Horton Tucker. He's only 21 years old, like Malik Beasley, Lauri Markkanen.
Uh-huh.
This is just, of course, Colin Sexton, who I think is going to
Yeah.
be an all-star at some point within the next couple of years. This is a very underrated team, and they can still end up with like a top 3 draft pick because of all the draft picks that are owed to them in the
Yeah.
future. They have pick swaps, they have other bad teams draft picks, or they could end up being bad
Yeah.
in the future. So it's not like they're mortgaging by doing well, by being a play-in team this year, or being a 6 seed or a 7 seed this year. It's not like they are mortgaging future draft picks. They're
Yeah.
actually only improving the value of their current players who they can then flip again
Uh-huh.
for more young talent and draft picks.
Right, right. So let's go over to the other conference you mentioned out in the East, to Cleveland. Um, there should be a playoff team out there. To me, the Eastern Conference is a lot improved, a lot deeper than it
Yeah.
has been in years. Um, have they closed the gap with the West? Like, how big is that gap still?
I think the gap was closed a while ago, actually.
Okay.
So if we first off, LeBron James, it was pretty much LeBron James. LeBron James was the East for about a
Yeah.
decade.
Yeah.
So from 2011 really, or 2010 through 2017 or 2018 when he left. So about
Okay.
9 years, so almost a decade. LeBron James was the East. That's
Hmm.
he made the
Yeah.
finals.
Fact. Yeah.
He made the finals all those years,
Yeah.
which
Yeah.
is very incredible. Um, but after LeBron left, it's almost like the East got better. I don't know what it was. I don't know if it was a change in strategy, but you had the Raptors win the championship in
Yeah.
2019, fair and square. Then in 2020, you had the Miami Heat come on where they rebuilt after LeBron
Yeah.
left, and they're now a perennial, very good Eastern Conference team,
Yeah.
making the Eastern Conference Finals last year, making the NBA Finals in 2020. Then in 2021, you had the Milwaukee Bucks, an Eastern Conference team,
Yeah.
uh, win it all. And then this past season, or last season, you had what I thought was the best defensive team, not just the best Eastern Conference team, but the best defensive team that I had seen since the 2004 Detroit Pistons, who beat
Okay.
the Hall of Fame Lakers.
Yeah.
And that's
That's
I'm
my
talking
team,
about
so I'm very
Boston.
familiar there.
Yeah, yeah, I'm talking
Yeah.
about the Boston Celtics,
Yeah.
obviously.
Yeah.
And I think Boston, because of their defense, they're they're the team to beat, but there are some question marks with them. Those
Hmm.
question marks are health because you had Gallinari get injured. He's out for the season pretty much. Then you also have Robert Williams, who's one of the best defenders in the NBA. He's out most likely until February or so. He just has recurring knee problems.
Yeah.
Hopefully he's
Yeah.
not even out for the season, but he's such a good defensive stalwart for the Celtics. If they continue to have, and then of course they have a brand new rookie head coach again for the
Right.
second straight season, the youngest coach in the NBA. I don't think that's as much an issue. I think the coach is going to be fine. My bigger issue, I think they lost to the Warriors or couldn't take it 7 games because of their lack of depth off the bench.
Okay.
And now that they have two key rotation players injured, that bench depth is certainly going to hurt them again. But they still have a very good starting five.
Yeah.
But I just worry again, if another player gets injured, do they have enough off the bench to help withstand that injury? They did trade for Malcolm Brogdon, which is good, but
Yeah.
just looking at their players, they have about 7 players right now
Hmm.
in who you can plug into their rotation, which is not enough. 7 is not enough in the NBA. I mean, maybe playoff time that is, but over a long season where you're load managing guys,
Yep.
where players are getting hurt, 7 is not enough. They're going to need to pull off a trade or hope that Blake Griffin or some of these other under the radar players
Yeah.
can step up and contribute in big ways. And maybe Blake Griffin is that guy. Maybe he is. We don't know. I wouldn't bank on it.
Yeah.
But if
Yeah.
Blake Griffin can really step up and become the Blake Griffin from 2 years ago, 3 years ago, when he was still had his ups, the athleticism, the penetration, the shot creation, the creation in general, then yeah, I think the Celtics will certainly be fine. But the East is loaded. Of course, you have the Sixers, who I think have some chemistry issues. It's just kind
I
of a
think it's a
James
fair
Harden
assessment.
thing.
Yeah.
I don't know how well Tobias Harris. I mean, I think he's a chemistry issue. I love James Harden, but he's very ball dominant, if you want to call it that.
Yeah.
I think, and again, injuries. Harden is getting older. He's been getting injured. Embiid's always having some type of injury. So that's certainly an issue there. Milwaukee, they won the championship 2 seasons ago. and they're an
Right.
excellent defensive team. They have great depth. So they're up there. Of course, I brought up Miami. They're up there. And then Brooklyn, that's like the big question mark because Brooklyn has the depth. Ben Simmons is back. Kyrie Irving is back. They have the firepower. They have the depth, but can they put it all together? Um, but you have Kevin Durant. You have Kevin Durant.
Yeah.
You're always gonna have it. You have Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving on the same team healthy. You're gonna have a chance certainly. And Ben Simmons is again one of the best defenders in the NBA. So the East is stacked and they're loaded.
Yeah, yeah. I definitely agree with the definitely on your Celtics point that the coaching hire isn't going to be that much of an issue. They're still a very talented team, um, but they injuries can be a detriment to any team, and they're definitely not, especially right now, not deep enough to sustain sustain with the injuries that they have. And then let's talk about a team in the East that's kind of flown under the radar. They had a pretty good young core, um, for the past couple years. It's changed a little bit. Um, the Charlotte Hornets, they've been a playing team a couple times. They made a coaching change from James Borrega, and they brought back Steve Clifford, who was the guy that Borrega replaced. So how much pressure is on them to take that next step after being the playing team so frequently in the past couple of years?
Well, there's definitely pressure to do well because LaMelo Ball's entering his third season. He was an all-star last year, I believe. Um, he won Rookie of the Year.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't want to say pressure, but there's certainly expectation that he's going to do, that he needs to do well. I don't know. I thought bringing in the new front office was a good move.
Okay.
I don't know if firing Borrego was the right move. In fact, I thought he did a very good job
I'm
of
with you on that. Yeah.
keeping them competitive. Um, so we'll see. Now they did hire Steve Clifford, who's a very good coach, and you know what you're going to get out of him. But I just think it's a lateral move to get rid of Borrego and bring in Steve Clifford. I mean, they're both, I think, excellent coaches
Yeah.
who will maximize the talent that they have on the team. But I if Steve Clifford can get them in to a top five seed, I mean, he's coach of the year without a doubt.
Okay.
Um, but I brought up what five other teams in the East
Yeah.
who are going to be very
It's a
competitive.
gauntlet.
So
Yeah.
it's going to be tough. On top of that, Gordon Hayward, his health, you just never know, right? And if
Uh,
Gordon Hayward's out, and on top of that, you have their other near all-star caliber player who's out because of the legal issues of domestic violence. Miles Bridges.
yep. Yep.
He was
Gifted
a
player, but unfortunate situation.
really, really good player who put
Yeah.
up great numbers and was about to get paid big. He put up 20 points a game. I mean, 7 rebounds, 4 assists. Like that's a big hole that they're
Hmm.
looking to replace, and they haven't replaced it. I think their work is cut out for them. I
Yeah.
think it's going to be a difficult season for them with Bridges out. It's basically LaMelo Ball with a bunch of other media, and if Gordon Hayward's out for any injuries, it's basically him with a second string roster, really.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. I can see that. Yeah.
I think it's going to be a tough year for them, and for some reason, people always want to blame the coach. It's not on the coach. It's not the coaching change. I don't think it was on Borrego. Um, my expectations for the Hornets just aren't very high because of the
Yeah.
Bridges situation, because of their lack of depth. I mean, I believe they have Mason Plumlee starting as center again. Uh, I'm a Mason Plumlee fan. I was at Duke when he was at Duke. He had a great senior season. Was just a really good Duke athlete, but
Yeah.
he's not. He's more of a backup center than a
Yeah.
starting.
Yeah. I don't agree with that. Yeah. I don't think they have the quite the same core that they've had the past couple years. And the East is very challenging now, especially with the Donovan Mitchell out there in Cleveland. Um,
Yep, you
yeah.
throw Cleveland in there too. So I mean, I want to recap those teams. So you have Milwaukee, you have
Uh,
Philadelphia, you have Miami, you have Boston, you have Cleveland, you have Brooklyn. So those are
there's
six
six right
teams.
there. Yeah.
You got six right there. And then you might even want to throw in, I don't know, we'll see about Chicago. They came on strong last year, but
Yeah.
I'm not going to throw them in, but just those six teams alone,
Yeah. You're
pretty
basically fighting for a play-in spot if you're in the East.
exactly.
Yeah.
And then let's not forget about the Knicks. I think the Knicks are going to surprise a lot of people.
Uh,
I think their chemistry certainly improved. They had some under the radar acquisitions. You know that they're going to defend well if Derrick Rose can stay healthy. The Knicks are another under the radar team
yeah.
that I have in the East. Again, not being in those top six slots, but
Yeah.
making the playoffs as one of those last two, 7, 8 seeds. I
You
don't
can say
think
that.
they're bad enough to play in, but I think the Knicks are going to surprise a lot of teams, and I could see them making a move or two as well to improve the team.
Yeah, that's another team with some good young players at its core that can that can come back quick and make some noise on the East. All right, I know we got a little time crunch here, so we're just gonna skip ahead to some quick fire predictions for the season here.
Sure.
Um, who is your MVP going in here?
That's a tough one, man. That's it. It's really, really tough, especially when we're so early into the season.
Yeah.
And it's tough because previously, when LeBron was dominating the East, you
Uh-huh.
just knew it. Like you could ask someone who's going to be the MVP, and LeBron would always be in the conversation.
Right.
But this year, if Jokic can continue to play at a high level and put up big stats, and the Nuggets, finish in the top five, then you got to give it to him. I think Embiid is going to struggle playing alongside James Harden for a full season.
Yeah.
Struggle meaning his numbers aren't going to be as good, and James Harden's going to essentially cannibalize him.
Yeah.
I think the team, and that's probably your next question. I think the team to beat is still the Warriors. But
Yeah.
again, the Warriors are so evenly distributed. I don't think any of their players are going to be in that MVP conversation.
Right.
Um, so first off, to pick the MVP, you need to decide, okay, who's going to be the top teams, and just those top six teams in the East. Giannis is always going to be in the conversation for
Yeah.
MVP. He's always going to be putting up big numbers. Then you also have to look at some of the other teams in the East who we brought up. Kevin Durant's always going to be in that conversation. James Harden's going to be in that conversation with the Sixers. So I think the safe bet,
Uh-huh.
I'm going to go with Jokic and in the West, and yeah, I'm gonna go with Jokic in the West, and I'm gonna go with Giannis in the East. Those would be my
Yeah,
top
those are
two
safe picks.
picks.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, all right. So you mentioned Steve Clifford earlier could, if he does well in Charlotte, could end up, contending for coach of the year. Who else do you see competing for coach of the year this year?
Well, I brought up the Utah Jazz, I brought up the New
Yeah.
Orleans Pelicans, and I'll also bring up. I thought Taylor Jenkins, the coach of the Memphis
Yeah,
Grizzlies,
he's a great one.
should have been coach of the year last year.
Yeah.
I believe it was Monty Williams who got coach of the year, which I mean he's a great coach, but I thought he deserved it in previous years, like in 2021 and 2020 during the bubble. They didn't make the playoffs, but they were their only undefeated team in the bubble.
Yeah.
And that's a completely different story. I thought they should have kind of reset the records when they restarted that bubble.
Yeah.
But for coach of the year, I'm gonna go with either Taylor Jenkins. If Memphis continue, they had a really good season
I
last
think
year,
that's
and
a great pick. Yeah.
I can see them piling up a lot of wins this year, being a really good regular season team. The problem is, come playoff time, they're gonna have to go through the Warriors again.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that's an issue. I can see Taylor Jenkins getting it. Also, like I brought up the New Orleans Pelicans and the Utah Jazz. So
Yeah.
the Pelicans coach Willie Green, if the Pelicans finish in the top six or so, I could see him getting it. And then the Jazz coach, like I said, Will Hardy, second youngest coach in the NBA, and the expectations for the Jazz are just incredibly low. If they even finish, if they even finish as a pure playoff team, no play-in, I could see him getting Coach of the Year as well. But in both conferences, to make the playoffs fair and square, so a top six team without play-in,
Hmm.
you're going to have to win a lot of games. There's no more winning 42 games, 43 games. Both conferences, you're going to have to win 45 games minimum, or 47 games just to make the playoffs without going to the play-in game.
Yeah. Okay. So, it's the NBA season preview show, so I have to ask. It might be a tough question to answer. You kind of mentioned the Warriors earlier. Um, what's your NBA Finals prediction?
Well, it's going to be Warriors in the West, and
Uh,
it's almost, I don't want to say it's unfair because the owners are willing to spend the money,
uh-huh.
but I think this year and next season it's a Warriors because I think Draymond Green's going to opt into his contract. He's not going to get paid more than that than what he's
Uh-huh.
going to make in his opt-in.
Right. Yeah.
He will get a nice contract, I think, from another team after next year. So, long-term deal that pays quite well. But the Warriors are still the team to beat. They have the experience. They load manage. They rest guys. They
Share the
have the
ball.
depth.
Yeah.
They share the ball. They play defense. They have a really good culture, and so I'm gonna pick them in the West. In the
Uh-huh.
East, because of what I brought up, I'm gonna eliminate the Celtics. I'm gonna eliminate the Sixers.
Uh-huh.
I think we're gonna see either the Bucks. I think one surprise team, which I would add as a seventh team to watch out
Okay.
for in the East, are the Toronto Raptors.
Okay.
Um, they won the championship just 3 years ago. They're really strong depth, really good starting five. Fred VanVleet and Pascal Siakam are a good tandem. They have some really good other talent. I don't think they're going to make the finals, though. I
Okay.
would put my money on the Milwaukee Bucks or the Miami Heat, one of those two teams.
Okay. Yeah. All right. I know you got to go, man. So, quickly before I let you get out of here, where can my audience find some more of your work and that stuff?
Yeah, go to my website, nareshvissa.com, NARESHVISSA, nareshvissa.com. Get on my mailing list there. Check out my books. I'd be glad to send a free copy of any one of my books if you email me through my website or contact me through the website. And uh, really had a good time joining this conversation and
Uh,
seeing how these
yeah.
predictions play out.
Yeah, I'm interested. All right, there you have it, Naresh Vissa. Uh, thanks for joining the show, man.
Thank you. It's been great.